Hello and welcome to Just a Damn Nerd. Today, we're talking about why AAA games are dying. Now, for a very long time in the game industry, AAA games were the class of gaming. It was more of a seal of quality than anything else, but in recent years, the term AAA game has no longer meant outstanding quality, but instead has often meant microtransactions, live service, shallow and unfinished games, and a very frustrating relationship between fan bases and most of these large companies. In this video, we're going to actually take a deep look at why the AAA gaming space has lost the support and love of its fan base. And I think when you start to look at that, the very first thing that comes to mind is monetization. Now, monetization isn't necessarily new in video games. Expansion passes, season passes, and map packs have been around for pretty much ever. And while I will not argue with anyone who says in the comments that monetization has gotten far more predatory in the last 5 to 10 years because it's absolutely gotten to a point of damn near unacceptability, well, the Congress probably needs to step in and consider this stuff to be illegal. The amount of money this stuff costs isn't really what's killing these games. It might be what's pissing you off, but it's not actually what's making you hate them. You see, the big problem with modern day monetization in AAA games is a large part of your enjoyment of the game is tied to you spending money on it, which is definitely by design, but it 100% ruins the experience for anyone not spending hundreds of additional dollars on the game. If you tie your progression in a game to exclusively cosmetics, and then lock your cosmetics behind paywalls, you are forcing your players who have already paid you $60 to $70 to $80 to $100 to pay you again to progress. Unfortunately, game companies do this shit because so many gamers have absolutely no problem with it, and will actually go even a step further in attacking people who do, becoming very offended, angry, and feeling attacked themselves. I assume that people who actually buy this garbage feel upset and offended when people start pointing it out, because they feel like they are the problem. But to be honest, it's true, they are the problem. We prove at loot boxes that if the gaming community will not support this shit, then it will go away. So here's some ways they can fix this monetization disaster without actually getting rid of the money train. Now, personally, I'm with everybody watching this video. They should just take this shit out of the games and go back to the way they did it before. Actually, they should just go all the way back to the way things were when I was younger, which is you release a complete 100% finished game and then release full expansion packs for that game 6 months to a year later. But the big companies will never do that because it will require them to actually put in work. What they actually want to do is have their cake and fuck it too. You see, they want to take the studio who actually made the game you spent the money on and repurpose them on making a sequel. That way they can take away all the cosmetics you spent hundreds of dollars on and force you to buy the same shit again, because God forbid they actually just update the game and give you better cosmetics. Because if they did that, then they may actually have to do some fucking work. And that's way too hard for the vast majority of video game companies. So, how to fix this shit without making them do extra work? Well, it's simple. Release a complete experience that includes hundreds of pieces of cosmetic armor for the multiplayer, weapons, maps, game modes. Then release your toxic ass battle pass 6 months to a year later, which has another 150 pieces of armor customization. This way your players actually feel like they got the game they paid for, and then you're asking for more money. By doing this, you will not offend your player base. You will keep your player base much happier, and you can stop being at odds with the player base. I don't know how these companies like Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft, Sony, Ubisoft, EA, Disney, Paramount, Warner Brothers, and these other huge entertainment companies think that they can actually win if they're at odds with the fan base. But they're never going to win if your fan base hates you. It's only going to get worse, and you're only going to lose more support among them. Next up is a death of AAA quality. Now, AAA used to mean quality. Nowadays, I would argue that it doesn't. The vast majority of games released in the last couple of years under the AAA banner have been unfinished at best. AAA companies have taken to releasing early access versions of their game, or just releasing buggy, unplayable messes like Anthem and then abandoning the game after you've already paid for it. These companies have lost the respect and trust of their fans because they are releasing subpar, unfinished games. All the gamers truly want is quality. There is no quality control in the industry anymore. The problem is we no longer trust that a AAA game will launch in the AAA state. Hell, in recent years, AAA games have launched in such unbelievably awful states that you can barely even play them. Take Battlefield 2042 or Anthem. And EA is not the only company who does this shit. Far Cry 6, when it came out, was a real pain in the ass to get working on a PC. The loss of quality is a big loss, but also the war of AAA has lost a majority of fan faith, because modern AAA games also have lost their storytelling. You see, AAA games during the Xbox 360 and PS3 era were stuff like BioShock, Mass Effect, and Skyrim. These games had fantastic stories. They were outstanding to the point where they have re-released these games at every generation rather than actually coming up with something new. You can compare Alan Wake or Mass Effect to just about any modern video game and the story will be better. With the exception of Resident Evil 8, I can't think of a single game so far in the new generation that has a story that's worth a shit. Also, AAA games have become very followy. They simply are copy-pasting what Destiny or World of Warcraft or Call of Duty do. So what you're getting is a bunch of games that feel almost exactly the same. I feel like I say this in every video, and I feel like it never gets through. If you are copying Destiny, or you are copying The Boys, or you are copying Halo, or you are copying Call of Duty, or you are copying World of Warcraft, we don't need it. We're not going to buy it because we can always just play the original, and the original will always be better than the copy. It doesn't matter how good the copy is, the original will always be better. Even if the copy was exactly as good as the original, it would still feel inauthentic to our brains because we have the original. So AAA no longer means good story. It no longer means finished products. It no longer means trustworthy or good business practices. It no longer means reaching out to the fans. So when you remove all these things, what does AAA actually stand for in the current game industry? Well, guys, not a damn thing. I can't think of anything positive to say about AAA games anymore. It's sad, but it's true. AAA games often underwhelm on console, PC, and never quite achieve what they once did, while looking back at the past and bringing forward AAA games from the past in order to make themselves feel better when they get big sale numbers on a game that is 10 years old. Next up here is the rise of the AA. Now, I was going to do a whole video about how the Unreal 5 engine changed gaming forever, but I really couldn't get enough content to actually do a full video, so it kind of just got cancelled. But it was largely about this. You see, Unreal changed everything, because Unreal allows small indie studios, or even one guy sitting in his living room, to actually make a video game. And Unreal 5's level of fidelity is so incredible that it allows these regular everyday Joes to make games that have better graphics than the majority of the big AAA companies. I mean, it's a great thing. It's a great thing for gaming, but it's just mind-boggling to see what they can do with Unreal. This creates an issue because now the AAA gaming space has a true competitor in the AA gaming space. And when you looked at Game Fest this year, you could see so many incredible AA and indie titles. Don't get me wrong, I have a few indie titles on my top 10 worst list, but the thing is, the show was like 80% indie titles, and most of them look pretty good. So now that the AAA space has this competitor, it needed to step up its game, but all it's actually done is gone backwards. I feel like the only good storytelling in game these days is in the indie and AA space. I'm starting to think AAA games don't even serve a purpose anymore, and the other reason the AA space is vastly overtaking the AAA space is talent. A lot of the really, really great game designers, guys who worked on those games that these big companies remake constantly, have actually founded their own AA studios. But actually, if you think about it, things are kind of just going back to the way they used to be. See, before the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation, most game development studios were not tied to a massive publisher. For example, studios like BioWare and Bethesda self-published, and actually the vast majority of studios in this era self-published. So did id. id self-published. But during the Xbox 360 and PS3 era, game budgets started to go crazy. Game budgets have actually gone down in recent years for indie studios because the ease of the Unreal Engine, where you only have to pay Epic a portion of what the game's sales actually are, which probably ends up being more in the long run, but it means that you can make any game you want, and you don't have to worry about spending $100 million just to get access to an engine. Because of the game cost during the Xbox 360 and PS3 era, it forced companies to actually consolidate. They were forced to find a big publisher like EA or Microsoft because they couldn't afford to bankroll their own games anymore. The great example of how bad game designing was in that era is the Tomb Raider game. You see, Crystal Dynamics launched an incredible Tomb Raider reboot on the Xbox 360. But when the Xbox One came out, they needed Microsoft to come and save them because they couldn't finish the game with the $80 million they were given by Square Enix because it wasn't enough money. And you do still see some of this in traditional game design. Bethesda recently needed Microsoft to come by them because they couldn't finish Starfield with the $89 to $100 million they were given by ZeniMax. So there are still some outrageously high game costs, but if you look at it, a lot of times these are actually engine costs. The reason Bethesda had so much to spend is because they needed to upgrade their engine because the old engine was outdated and people weren't happy about it anymore. So in a lot of ways, gaming is going back to the way it used to be, with small independent studios making the majority of top-end games. You also see companies like EA and Ubisoft really struggling. Most likely, if something doesn't change for those two companies, they will find themselves being out of business in the next 10 or so years, especially EA, who is struggling a lot more than you hear. As a matter of fact, EA has been trying to sell themselves for about half a year now, and have not been able to find any takers, even though they have the NFL license, which actually seems like it'd be worth buying them just to get your hands on. But you see, EA has tarnished the NFL license so much that it's hard to believe that you can make an NFL game now that has a lot of fan support, because EA can't even make an NFL game that doesn't piss off its fan base. Activision Blizzard was forced to sell themselves amid scandal, even though Activision Blizzard is probably the most successful company left in the industry. Ubisoft can't release a game that gets higher than a 60 on Metacritic, and most of their fans have abandoned ship with the exception of Rainbow Six Siege, which is well liked. Microsoft continues to release subpar unfinished games, and they're adding in most of the modern predatory practices that AAA games do. Microsoft actually runs the risk of losing their fan support if they don't change the way they're behaving. The big problem for Microsoft is the unfinished games they continue to release, like Halo Infinite. Sony seems to be a bastion of good games still, but they have been exploring the ideas of monetizing their games further, which would be a true disaster for us gamers. Nintendo doesn't monetize anything, but I feel like Nintendo pretty much just remakes Mario and Zelda every few years. So in this way, the AAA industry has become very stale. And the final thing I want to mention in this video, the final thing and probably the most important thing that has contributed to the downfall of the AAA space, is a loss of support amongst fan bases, love of fan bases. Now, don't get me wrong, there is always that whale who yells at you. And I even get it if you're like 15 and you're watching this video. I understand, because when I was a kid and people would tell me the old stuff was better, I always got mad about it. I was always like, man, fuck you. The old stuff's not better. You're just old and you don't like the new stuff. Except the difference now is, with the remasters of stuff like Mass Effect and Alan Wake and Resident Evil 2, you can actually play the old stuff. And you can actually say the old stuff was better. Because it really was. This is true. They have made games worse over the years because of the fact they're trying to sell you parts to make games better. But the obvious loss of fan support is really hurting these companies. It is true. The money they've made has actually increased over the years. And for certain franchises, sales have actually increased over the years. But we are actually starting to see the fall of AAA games. You pretty much can only look at one game to see this, and that's Call of Duty. Call of Duty's year-over-year sales has gone down pretty much every year. With the exception of the excellent Modern Warfare reboot, Call of Duty sales have plummeted actually, looking at far lower sale numbers for Cold War and the second lowest sale numbers in franchise history for the awful Vanguard. I don't understand why these studios don't realize you can't have a diversity checklist in a World War II game. And if you're making a fictional World War II game, then you just shouldn't do that. A fictional World War II game is also fucking stupid. And diversity checklists have contributed to the loss of fan support in every industry, especially film. Mostly film, I'd say. Diversity checklists have contributed to a loss of support, but it is somewhat in the game industry as well. This idea of determining how diverse a character is to determine the worth of a story is the stupidest fucking thing I think I've ever heard. I couldn't even imagine how you could write a story with the idea of having to include characters that necessarily don't belong in the story because the studio thinks you'll sell more copies if people watching the movie think someone in the movie or video game looks like them. I hate to break it to these big studios, but in spite of what people might say on Twitter, 90% of people are not that goddamn sensitive. If you just stick to the lore, narrative, and established characters, you might get somebody saying, well, why isn't there more X in your story? All you have to say to that is, we're staying loyal to the traditional characters and the legacy characters. If you do that, fans will not hate you nearly as much. A lot of this problem can be seen with Halo Infinite. I mentioned in my Halo Infinite videos that the lack of loyalty to the legacy characters contributes heavily to the hatred 343 gets. And it's true of everyone. So now you're fostering fan toxicity, fans screaming at each other on Twitter, YouTube, and social media. In spite of what YouTube thinks, thumbs downs and negative comments are not positive.
Well, I mean, obviously the second one made me angry, so that's a bigger reaction.
Engagement is engagement to the algorithm. You're obviously very interested here.
Okay.
Engagement may be engagement to the algorithm, but engagement isn't actually engagement. Also, these game companies have spent years not listening to their fan bases, which is why fan hatred and loss of fan support continues to get worse in the industry. They have spent decades not even considering what we want, what we ask for. I'm going to use Infinite for an example again. Like I said, I made 3 videos on Infinite. Check them out if you haven't. But Halo Infinite and 343 are some of the worst about it. And the reason I like to use Infinite in these examples is because Infinite's still a pretty fun game to play. Its campaign is decent. Its multiplayer is decent. But it's a game I wouldn't recommend to anybody because it is such a massive pain in the ass with so many problems. And they all stem from 343's unwillingness to listen to fans. And this permeates the entire game industry. If you never listen to us fans, how do you expect to actually make stuff we like? These companies do not understand their actual fan base is the measuring stick by which they're judged by. If you've never played a Call of Duty game in your life, or you've never played Destiny, or you've never played Halo, or you've never played Madden, and you have a friend who loves one of these games, plays it all the time, and you ask him, hey buddy, I've been thinking about picking up Halo or Call of Duty, and he says, man, don't pick up that shit. I'm sick of that game. All they do is fuck us. I hate it. Well, you're not going to play it. You're not going to fucking play it. And that is how fan perception works. We are going to talk to the people who are longtime fans about something. You can't capture a new audience, really. I mean, I guess you could, but it's very difficult and takes a long time. Capturing a new audience is nearly impossible, and game companies and movie studios seem to want to do it exclusively. And if you want to know how well this trying to capture a new audience works, Marvel Phase 4 just proves that. The vast majority of movies in this phase didn't even break even, especially not once you add in the marketing budgets, which most studios don't add in, and add like 60% to the actual movie cost. So you can see the loss of fan trust, the loss of fan love, the loss of a fan base can destroy a product. And you can see by what we've listed earlier in this video, the monetization disasters, the loss of quality, and the rise of true competitors, as well as diversity checklists, hating your own fan base.
We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
You can play on your tablet too.
Offending your own fan base and doing nothing the fan base actually asks you contributes or even fuels the fall of the AAA game. And if this continues on the route it goes, gaming will change forever. Because the massive AAA game is going to go the way of the dinosaur. Eventually, Microsoft and Sony will own all major AAA studios, and the only companies left will be AA studios. Well guys, thanks for watching this video. I appreciate it like always. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. If for no other reason to help out a small YouTube channel that we're trying to get off the ground here. I appreciate you guys making it to the end of the video. Let me know what you think, and also what you think I can do better in the future. If you're one of my fellow small YouTubers, let me know in the comments that you subscribed and you're a small YouTuber, and I'll subscribe to you as well. Us small YouTubers have got to stick together. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, this is the Damn Nerd signing out.